Hey everyone, in today's video we'll be taking a look at two devices. Now, I've looked at these devices individually before in their own videos, but this video will be more of a head-to-head comparison of the two. We'll look at the specs, color options, pricings, and a little bit more. If you're looking for a low-cost retro handheld emulator, which can play up to PS1 games, both of these devices will have you covered. Thanks to Geekbuying for sending these devices out to me for review. If you are interested in these devices or other handheld consoles, they do have an okay selection of consoles. Feel free to check them out in their Black Friday and presumably Cyber Monday deals in the links below. As for specs, the Miyoo Mini Plus has a 3.5-inch display with a 640 by 480 resolution. It has a quad-core ARM Cortex-A7 processor with 128 megabytes of RAM. It also has a 3000 mAh battery, built-in Wi-Fi, but no video outsource. The Anbernic has a more powerful quad-core ARM Cortex-A9 processor with 256 megabytes of RAM and a dual-slot microSD card slot. It has a smaller 2600 mAh battery and it does not have built-in Wi-Fi. However, it does have mini HDMI out, so you can play games on different screens if you're into that. The screen on the Anbernic is the same dimension and resolution. Now, getting into what's different with these devices, both are very well built in my opinion for the price class. The plastics feel quite nice, however I feel as though the Anbernic's plastics are a better quality. Seeing as I have a different or similar colorway and not having a different kind of translucent case option, I can assume that similar materials were used because it's a solid kind of color plastic. So both devices are quite comfortable for me to hold, although I do personally enjoy the Anbernic more for my hand size. This is due to the Anbernic being larger in size compared to the Miyoo. You can one-hand them both easily, but the Miyoo is a lot easier, I would say, than the Anbernic, depending on your hand size, obviously. Triggers are definitely more accessible on the Miyoo Mini Plus, as the inner two are raised compared to the outer. So when using them, it is easier to click and kind of discern the two when pressing them in. And then the actual click or the tactile feel, they both feel pretty similar to me. They're both about the same. The front-facing buttons are quite different though. The front-facing buttons on the Anbernic do seem to be a little bit firmer to press and give more like a satisfying feel when pressed. The start and select are more out of the way on the Miyoo as opposed to the Anbernic, which brings them in close into the other inputs. The menu button is either recessed on the Miyoo or pronounced on the Anbernic. Personally, I prefer the Miyoo's approach for this one. The D-pad is quite different on each. For the Anbernic, I find that it's much more stiff, which for me is preferable on the D-pad on my handhelds, as I'm not really into fighting games too much. So being able to roll the D-pad easily is not really a concern of me to do those diagonal kind of maneuvers. Now, both the D-pads were capable of rollover, although I found it was harder to trigger on the Miyoo unit. This was mainly on the side buttons when rocking them up and down. It didn't bother me in my games, but it definitely would not fly for others. Pressing the down arrow and rocking it side to side didn't seem to trigger it as often. Button differences aside, as previously mentioned, the Anbernic device supports dual SD cards and HDMI out. The Anbernic does not support Wi-Fi, but the Miyoo does. So, if you're into retro achievements, your decision has likely been made already. That is, unless you consider the recently released Anbernic RG35XX Plus, which does include Wi-Fi. Now, I never found heat to be an issue on either device, although there is some produced in the higher-end emulation. Nothing to warrant a fan, however. Now, when it comes to both of the screens, I do have a tendency to prefer the Miyoo Mini Plus. Even though they are the same resolution and size, I do find the Miyoo Mini Plus to be much more kind of pinpoint in look when viewing the same game. It's noticeable on the floorboards when viewing the screen in person on this Pokemon game. Now, due to compression, it may not be as noticeable or as apparent through an online video, but it is worth noting that the Anbernic does get noticeably brighter. Speakers on both are fine, but absolutely do look into replacing them if you're into things like that. Personally, I'm not, but there is an option for the Miyoo. However, I haven't really looked into it much further than that. I don't know about the Anbernic, and definitely don't make your choice based on speaker options. For one last physical difference, we'll talk about color options. Now, the Anbernic has the retro gray color found here and the translucent options coming in purple and white. The Miyoo Mini Plus comes in the gray color I have as well, and translucent black and purple. Instead of a translucent white, you'll get a solid white on the Miyoo. As for software, these devices were given to me preloaded from Geekbuying. We have the Miyoo Mini Plus, which comes with ONIONOS. And ONIONOS is typically regarded as the better of the two operating systems when compared to GARLICOS. The Anbernic will come with a simple but passable Anbernic OS as well as GARLICOS, at least from Geekbuying. However, you can install both on your own. The ONIONOS software does seem to be more thoughtfully laid out and planned out. ONIONOS will come pre-configured with best settings or generally pleasing settings for your games and ROMs, whatever. GARLICOS, at least in its release form at the time, does appear to be playing catch-up with ONIONOS for certain features. Having options is great, but honestly, you only have one option when using these devices, honestly, and don't use the stock software on either device, in my opinion. I haven't used the Mini UI, but honestly, just use ONIONOS. Things do seem easier to operate on ONIONOS when it comes to working with the operating system and the file management within it. For instance, getting Nintendo DS Emulation on the Miyoo Mini Plus is a simple drag and drop, and same goes for the install of the OS itself. The Miyoo also seems to accept these kind of beta or not officially supported emulators better than the RG35. In-game settings to RetroArch is more kludgy on the Anbernic, I find, whereas on the Mini Plus it is more instant and seamless. Same goes for all the other shortcut keys when playing games. Again, you'll want to reference these manuals or online documents to find shortcuts for each device. Systems available to play on these devices, both by default, can emulate up to and including PS1. Now, where these devices really shine though is with Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance, which should be obvious kind of based on the form factor. Now, when it comes to the performance of the two devices, the Anbernic is more powerful, and as such, some heavy 3D based games on PlayStation will perform better and be more stable, but the Anbernic will also get a little bit warmer as a result. Both devices can be tweaked with overclocking and undervolting through both softwares, and thus getting a little bit more performance from each device. Further tweaks to image quality and filters can be applied through RetroArch, as is the case with most of these retro handhelds. When playing one of my favorite games back and forth, Super Ghouls and Ghosts on the SNES, I did honestly have the most enjoyable time on the Anbernic. Boiling it down just to the bare differences between the two devices, the screen brightness and the form factor. The Anbernic screen brightness will get brighter overall when playing the games, and as well the larger case on the Anbernic is just slightly more comfortable to hold for me. This part will be subjective as well as the screen. Some just won't care that the Anbernic screen will get brighter and prefer the more kind of sharper look, at least in my opinion, of the Miyoo screen. I don't think you'll have a bad time playing any of your favorite retro titles on either device, and the differences you should be worried about are things like software used, features present or not, such as the HDMI out on the Anbernic. Yes, the Anbernic will at times perform better than the Miyoo Mini Plus, but in games I played, including Tekken 3, Metal Gear Solid 1, Sloodstorm, Armored Core, and more, both performed as expected, and I didn't have any noticeable issues performance-wise either. Both handhelds are capable of running Nintendo DS titles, although you will have to introduce frame skipping in most, if not all, games. Don't expect either of these devices to perform amazingly in this category. However, it can be done through sideloading. Now, when comparing these two head-to-head, playing DS games is much better on the Anbernic, at least in the few that I tested, like Mario Kart, Mario 64, and New Super Mario Bros. Mario Kart seemed to run the worst out of them all, and that was without overclocking each device. When overclocking each handheld, they did perform slightly better, but you still will have glitches and slowdowns on both. Mainly with the Anbernic on Mario Kart, the screens will flicker when loading into a new track. Again, I need to reiterate, these devices are not verified to run this software, so it is a miracle it's working at all. Determining which device is better of the two is a little muddied. On paper, the Anbernic should be the better of the two. It has the more powerful processor, better build quality, dual SD card slot, and better buttons in my opinion. As well, the screen does get brighter than the Miyoo Mini Plus. However, the Miyoo screen does appear to be more sharp, at least to my eyes, and they are the same size and resolution. Now, with that being said, overall I had the most enjoyable time using the Miyoo Mini Plus, mainly down to ONIONOS. ONIONOS just seems to be a little bit better in my opinion. There are more thoughtful design touches included. Now, not to say the GARLICOS is bad, but it just doesn't seem as polished. On top of that, ONIONOS is much easier to find and manage and to work with, like I said, on the kind of system level, especially when it comes to setting up a fresh new device. It isn't difficult on either device, and following a proper tutorial online would be beneficial and make the process dead simple, I'm sure. On top of ONIONOS, the Miyoo Mini Plus has built-in Wi-Fi. This makes things like over-the-air updates possible and much easier to do. As well, installing apps from their package manager is a breeze. However, if you are into the Anbernic's design and wanting Wi-Fi and HDMI out, well then you can just go ahead and purchase the Anbernic RG35XX whatever plus. So many damn numbers of letters, acronyms. That was recently released. Unfortunately, Geekbuying doesn't have them in stock at the moment, but I am sure in the future that they will. Otherwise, if you need a device right away and can't find the Anbernic Plus in stock anywhere, the Miyoo Mini Plus is still a very fine option, with the benefit of being able to play multiplayer games and trade Pokemon through Wi-Fi, something the new Anbernic should be able to do as well. Now, one other thing to note is that apparently the Anbernic RG35XX Plus can run PSP, Dreamcast, and Nintendo DS games with its chipset. Something I haven't personally verified, but that would be a huge reason for the Anbernic if true. Either way, I don't think you'll have a bad time with either device, but just be sure to look into all the features and pick out the device that best suits your needs at the end of the day. If you don't really care, I would just go with the cheapest option, which currently is the Anbernic using Geekbuying's listings. However, personally, I would spend the extra money to get the Miyoo Mini Plus, knowing what I know now. If you have any suggestions for these devices or cool uses for them, please let me know in the comments. If you don't have either device, which one speaks to you the most? Or if you have a completely different handheld, which is your favorite within its price range? Again, a huge shout out to Geekbuying for sending these devices over for review. No money exchange hands except the devices, obviously. However, links will be in the description below for affiliate links to their store. If you're interested in any device, not just these, do check them out, as they do have currently Black Friday sales and presumably Cyber Monday deals to be had. They do carry more than just these handhelds as well, or handhelds in general. They carry other electronics and whatever. Please do let me know if you have any issues with them, with their site or services, should you choose to use them. I'm very curious on this. As always, thanks to my channel members Roy Wayne, PC3MKR, Root Access, Rico1217, and Darkstar. You know the drill at this point. You guys are awesome. More than awesome. But seriously, take that money and buy someone you care about a coffee or something. Warm someone else's soul for a while. Thanks to everyone else who watches, chats, and interacts. It means a lot. Finally, I hope you all have a great day.